She saw the twins first, two reflections stitched into the concourse glass, before she recognized the man tying a shoelace, and that was the twist that snapped Tuesday in half. Not the engine roar from a private hangar, not the Davos agenda in her head, not the text from an assistant who treated minutes like currency. Two children with her cheekbones and a man with steady hands turned a global aviation CEO into a woman who forgot how to breathe. Newark was doing its job, turning departures into numbers and arrivals into lines. Snow feathered the skylights until the light learned to whisper. Olivia Langston, who signed fuel hedges between elevator dings and could outbrief a minister in an airport lounge, was 3 turns from the private gate when the pass stepped into frame. Elijah's coat was cheaper now. His hairline had retreated like a tide that didn't plan to return. He tempered the knot on a small boot with the gentleness of somebody who understands how much the small things decide the big ones. The taller girl read without looking, her whole body an underline. The other laughed at something inside a vending machine as if it had winked. Olivia's heels stilled. Ava. Leah. The names ignited inside her like runway lamps, sequencing her toward land and reminding her how far she'd drifted from the strip. Flight 227 to Austin now boarding at Gate C3, the intercom said, professional and oblivious. Austin, a skyline she rented, a life that fit in an itinerary. She should have pivoted left toward the hush of private security, a good espresso, a cabin where the safety card would never be needed. Instead, she stepped into the nowhere between first-class commercial and the doors that open only with a nod. Through the partition, Elijah stood. People become different and somehow more themselves. He looked up. Their eyes met in the air between them. 2 panes of glass and 6 years of silence. She waited for flame or frost. He offered neither. He held her gaze the way a craftsman holds a level, checking if anything could be trusted, then turned back to the girls. Not cruelty, choice. Her phone vibrated. 3 messages from Jed. Wheels up -12. Swiss press wants 5 minutes at tarmac. Olivia? She opened a thread whose existence she'd never justified to anyone. Elijah Ford. There are numbers you delete to prove a point. There are numbers you keep because you're not done losing. Behind the glass, Leah tugged his sleeve. Ava flipped a page. Elijah said something small, and both girls listened the way children listen when the world is safe. Olivia swallowed an old hospital smell, citrus and antiseptic, and saw herself in a different window. Discharge papers shaking in a hand that didn't feel attached. 2 bassinets like islands, a nurse talking about normal baby blues with a brightness that turned light into glare. A fall with no floor. Voices that invented exits in windows. The night she chose the part of the story she could survive. She stepped backward until an empty gate took her in. Airports absorb panic. It sounds like announcements if you listen right. She sat. In the reflection, expensive composure held. The eyes didn't. She unlocked her phone and typed what courage could afford. It's me. She deleted it, typed it again. The cursor blinked like a monitor in a room where someone had just started breathing differently. A toddler nearby clapped for a plane as if it were performing. A gate agent told a man his upgrade had cleared into a happiness that would last exactly 1 boarding group. A woman in red said, "I'm boarding now," into a phone that promised someone would be waiting. The life Olivia had picked over mothering, precision, velocity, applause, went on selling itself to her. She tried words with receipts attached, "I'm sorry," and saw them collapse under the weight of 6 birthdays she hadn't attended, hair she hadn't braided, a lullaby she'd refused to finish, a diagnosis she hadn't earned the right to worry about. In her head, she could already hear Elijah's steady answer to every justification. They didn't need you to explain. They needed you to stay. She stood, heart miscounting beats like a taxiing jet on a grooved runway, and walked not toward Davos but toward windows where the only view was weather. She took off one glove finger by finger, like undressing a truth. There was a time she could treat any crisis as an algorithm. Variables, constraints, optimum. This one offered only instructions she had practiced until they were polished and useless. Say nothing you can't live with. Promise nothing you can't do twice. Her phone lit again. A new text badge appeared in the thread with no recent history. When? She froze. The word didn't hold anger, or forgiveness, or a door. It held a clock. It held a map. It held a kind of mercy that wore no perfume. Olivia didn't allow herself a smile. Relief is a slippery floor. She typed, then erased, then typed again. A plane she would not take, a city she would, the place where the world names itself ordinary, a clinic near a park, a time that admitted she would have to choose it over the room where microphones made her important. Beside her, a janitor leaned his mop against the stainless cart and checked a photo on his phone, a kid with gap teeth and a paper crown. He put the phone away and kept the airport clean, which is another way of keeping the world running. Olivia pressed send. No whoosh, no confetti, just the message leaving and the life rebalancing around its absence. She stood there long enough to learn the angle of winter light on runway ice. When she finally turned, she did not pick up her pace. The lounge orchids didn't care. The pilots could file a new slot. The panel chair could ask someone else about post-carbon infrastructure and get a better quote. Olivia walked to the exit like people do when they decide to be late for the version of themselves that always arrived on time. At the curb, a car idled with the patience of money. She didn't take it. She texted her assistant one sentence, "No calls until I say otherwise," and walked toward a taxi rank that smelled like coffee and brakes. Snow found her hair and turned it honest. On the ride into a city that had hosted her more convincingly than it had contained her, she watched strangers in coats move with intention and remembered that belonging looks like all the smallest things. Buying the right yogurt, learning which street does not flood in June, knowing when a child is lying with her face. At a red light, the driver thumped the steering wheel in time to a song on the radio and glanced back. "Flight canceled?" he asked. "Rebooked," she said, and felt the truth of it all the way down. Her phone buzzed once. Tomorrow. 10. Liberty Park Clinic. 4 words, no punctuation. Enough. She tucked the phone away like a fragile passport and faced the city as if it were weather she had finally decided to stand in. The snow kept doing what snow does. Soften edges, quiet streets, remind people what it sounds like when the world asks you to listen. The city looked like a spreadsheet from 48 floors up, tidy, legible, pretending to be simple. Olivia stood in front of the glass anyway, letting Austin's gray morning press cool against her reflection. In it, she saw what everyone else saw, a CEO who never missed a slot time, whose signatures had weathered storms and floated fleets. But the glass had turned traitor. It kept showing her eyes. No calls, she told her assistant on the walk from the hangar. No visitors. To her credit, the hallway obeyed. The office swallowed her, and then, in the old habit of rooms she ruled, offered her a chair, a view, a day that could still be salvaged with the right sequence of meetings. She sat and didn't salvage anything. The knock was soft, which meant Cameron. Former FBI, current conscience on payroll, her presence was an admission that Olivia had come to prefer facts that arrived in black folders. Cameron stepped in, set one on the desk, and said what good operatives say when the story has already started without you. "Everything you asked." "I didn't ask," Olivia said, "because lies are easier when they're accurate on one technicality." Cameron blinked once, her version of an eye roll, and slid the folder closer. Olivia opened it the way you open a box you regret ordering but insist on unboxing, slowly, with the hope that cardboard can change outcomes. Elijah Ford, age 42, occupation, part-time music teacher, Wasatch Charter Middle. Her pulse practiced turbulence. She turned the page. Residence, rental near Liberty Park. Income, modest. Medical, ALS, diagnosed 8 months prior. Early onset. The 3 letters arrange the room. ALS. There are diagnoses with metaphors and ones that just go about their business. This one had never cared for poetry. Confirmed? Olivia asked, the word already failing at empathy and landing squarely in logistics. Confirmed, Cameron said. Functional, early moderate. No vent support. Fatigue. Fasciculations noted by PCP. He's keeping up. Mostly. Photos fell into her lap next. Elijah, thinner at the jawline, walking between the girls under snow that didn't care who it decorated. Elijah in a music room, correcting a student's posture with 2 fingers on a spine, the gesture still tender. Elijah asleep on a couch, daughters asleep on him, mugs on the table. Best dad ever, chipped and honest. Olivia looked away and then looked back. Pain is a kind of magnet. There's one more, Cameron said, producing a scan. Staff lines, notes, lyrics. The handwriting was his, the unfinished kind. I tried to build a song with what you left me, but the melody breaks where your name should be. How did you? Shared school drive, Cameron said. He uploads practice materials. This one wasn't for students. Saved badly. I shouldn't have found it. She paused. I did. Olivia set the page down, the way you set down a glass you don't trust your hand to hold. She stood, crossed to the wall safe, dialed in the combination she could do asleep. Inside, wrapped in dark blue linen, were 2 envelopes with names in her own hand. Ava and Leah. She had written them 5 years ago and then let the calendar carry them away to a drawer that kept secrets the way some drawers keep batteries. She placed the letters beside Elijah's music on the desk, the 3 papers arranged into a truth she could finally read. Cameron didn't stare. Professional mercy is knowing where not to put your eyes. What will you do? Cameron asked. The old answers cued themselves. Call legal, draft board note, announce leadership transition as stewardship. Olivia could feel the shape of the press release in her mouth. She closed it. I'm going to Salt Lake, she said, without an entourage, with a driver who doesn't ask questions? Done, Cameron said. Then because her job wasn't only movement, do you want company? If I bring the part of my life that surveils, Olivia said, I'll lose the part that might be invited. Cameron nodded. At the door she hesitated, then did the thing friends do when they are disguised as staff. Go as the woman who wrote those letters, not the title that erased the need for them. When the door closed, the room remembered how to hum. Olivia pulled her phone closer, opened the message thread under Elijah Ford, and read the last incoming word until it changed temperature. When? She typed soon, erased it. Name a place, erase that too. She could not outrun accuracy. I saw the folder. I shouldn't have. I'm sorry, tell me your clinic schedule. I will work around it. Her thumb hovered. Timing had always been her religion. She sent it and felt nothing theatrical, just the absence of not sending. The reply arrived fast enough to feel like deliberation instead of impulse. Tomorrow. 10. Liberty Park Clinic. 4 words. A place you could find without a map, a life you could ruin by being late. On the way home that night, she didn't go home. She drove to a beige law office with a view of a parking lot and asked a partner with a careful tie to draft a document that had waited 6 years, an agreement to sell part of her stake. The pen was cold and heavy. When the lawyer asked, "Do you want to sleep on it?" she said, "I haven't slept in years." He did not understand. He didn't need to. She signed her name as if it were a promise the girls would never read and still feel. Back at the penthouse, she laid the 2 old letters on the bedspread side by side. She read the first lines. By the time you read this, I hope I have learned how to stand near you. And winced at a woman who had tried to substitute hope for presence. She slid them back into the linen and then wrote a third, in a plain notebook she used for numbers, not feelings. I left because the dark had a voice and it knew my name. I'm coming because I cannot survive another year where your names are only facts I know. She didn't know if she would ever give it to anyone. Some letters are written to steady her hands for the next morning. Dawn found her at the hangar with a small bag and no entourage. The pilot asked, "Wheels up early?" And for the first time in a decade, she said, "Let's wait for our slot." She watched ground crew clip a hose onto a wing with the quiet competence that keeps strangers safe. She thought about all the hands that had steadied what she'd put into motion. She thought about Elijah's hands and their tremor that was not permission to panic, just a new constraint. Halfway to Utah, she opened the folder again. She tried to read it like a dossier and failed. It had become scripture. She pressed the photo of Elijah asleep with daughters to the window and let the sunrise ghost across it. Their faces layered with clouds and wing, and she saw, for one kind second, the version of the future that doesn't apologize for existing. Salt Lake held winter with bone-deep seriousness. A driver held a sign that said, Miss S, because names can be weather too. The SUV smelled like vinyl and silence. She texted one sentence when the clinic's brick came into view. I'm here. I won't come in unless you say so. The dots appeared and vanished and then returned. Wait by the railing. We'll come out. She slipped the letters into her coat pocket and felt their corners press like small laws. The air bit her cheeks. She wrapped her fingers around a metal rail that taught her, in one cold line, what tomorrow would require. Less cleverness, more staying. The metal railing was colder than it looked. Olivia held on anyway, palms pressed flat, letting the bite remind her that waiting was an action now. Snow powdered the sidewalk in patient, deliberate layers. Across the street, the clinic's glass door released a small gust of warm air each time it opened, the smell of antiseptic and old carpet mixing with the city's frozen breath. At 10:04 they appeared. Elijah came first, shoulders hunched against the cold. The knit cap didn't quite hide the thinning at his temples, and his left hand trembled just slightly when he reached for the door handle. Beside him, the twins flanked him like parentheses, identical only in the outline. One cautious, one radiant. Leah, bright-eyed, tugged on his sleeve and pointed towards something on the sidewalk. Ava, quieter, buried in her scarf, carried a small book pressed tight to her chest as if it could define the world for her. Olivia felt her lungs seize up in the same way they had at the airport. The instinct to run was still in her body, her first and worst habit, but she didn't move. Elijah saw her first. His eyes didn't widen, didn't flinch. They settled on her with the calm finality of a man who had already run every version of this scene in his mind. He walked forward, snow crunching beneath worn boots. You don't get to do this, he said when he reached the curb. His voice wasn't angry, only measured, like a conductor asking an orchestra to rest. I'm not here to cause a scene, Olivia said. The words came out rehearsed the way she'd once begun a press statement. I just wanted to see you. See them. His gaze moved past her shoulder to the waiting SUV behind her, the tinted windows hiding the driver. You've seen us, he said. Now what? Leah tugged his hand. Dad, who's that? The question stabbed through the cold air, small but surgical. Olivia opened her mouth, but Elijah's hand came up. Not yet, he said. His tone wasn't sharp, just protective. He looked at Olivia again. They don't need more confusion in their lives. I don't want to confuse them, she said quietly. I just wanted to see them breathing, to make sure I hadn't lost them. His voice cracked only on the last word, almost imperceptibly. You lost the right to use that sentence, Olivia. Her breath trembled. I know. Ava's eyes, the same green-gray as hers, rose from her book. For a long moment she simply stared, her expression unreadable. Then she spoke, the tone cool and articulate in the way 8-year-olds shouldn't yet manage. Why are you here? Olivia swallowed. Because I realized I left something unfinished. Ava tilted her head, unconvinced. You can't finish people, she said and turned back to her book. Leah, curious despite everything, stepped closer. You have my eyes, she said suddenly, half to herself. Olivia felt something rupture in her chest. I think you have mine, she whispered. Elijah's jaw tightened. Leah, we're leaving. Olivia took a step forward. Elijah, please. He raised his hand again, the same steady hand that had once played piano lullabies through her sleepless nights. You don't get to show up and rewrite the ending, he said softly but firmly. You left without a fight. Now you're here without a reason. I had a reason, she said, voice breaking despite her best efforts. I just didn't have words for it. He looked at her like a man who'd built an entire vocabulary in her absence, and no longer had space for translations. Then find them, he said. The door to the clinic opened behind him. A nurse waved, calling out something about follow-up paperwork. Elijah nodded. Go inside, he told the girls. I'll be right there. Ava obeyed first. Leah hesitated, her mittened hand frozen in midair between curiosity and obedience. Then she followed her sister in. The door closed with the soft thud of a chapter ending. Elijah turned back to Olivia, his breath visible in short bursts. I won't stop you from watching them from a distance, he said, but you don't get to haunt them. I'm not haunting anyone, she said. I'm trying to come back. His eyes flicked to the ground. Then start by understanding what your leaving did to the rest of us. They don't need to watch you apologize. They need to see if you can stay. He started to turn away. Panic flared in her throat. Elijah, she said. He stopped. I'm sorry, she said, for everything that came after the silence. He didn't answer right away. The snow kept falling between them, soft, relentless, indifferent. Then finally he exhaled. I used to write songs for you, he said. Now I write them for the girls. It's quieter that way. And then he walked back inside. The SUV door clicked open behind her, the driver's voice polite, neutral. Miss S., would you like me to take you back to the hotel? Olivia nodded, numb. The world outside blurred through the window as the car pulled away. Salt Lake spinning by in gray and white streaks. At a red light, she noticed a smear of purple near the clinic entrance. A scarf dropped in the snow. Leah's scarf. Without thinking, Olivia told the driver to stop. She stepped out, scooped it up, and brushed away the frost with her bare hand. It smelled faintly of strawberries and the kind of detergent that made the world smell like safety. Back in the car, she pressed the scarf against her chest. The heat from her coat slowly thawed it, drop by drop, until the fabric was warm. For the first time in years, Olivia realized she wasn't crying from loss. She was crying from proof. Proof that the world she'd abandoned was still real, still breathing, still reachable. That night, she sat on the edge of the hotel bed with the scarf folded in her lap. Her phone screen glowed with Elijah's number, his last message hovering above it like an open door. Her thumb hesitated above the keyboard. I'm still here. She sent it before she could delete it again. The cafe hadn't changed, which was both impossible and exactly right. Same oak counter worn smooth at the edges, same chalkboard with the ghost of old specials half erased, same faint cinnamon smell from a bakery oven that never retired. Olivia stood in the doorway, letting the bell above it mark her return like a timestamp. She hadn't eaten all day, but hunger wasn't what brought her here. Elijah was already at a corner table, back to the window, a paper cup in front of him untouched. The navy sweater looked familiar, frayed at the cuffs, too thin for Utah cold. He didn't stand when she approached, didn't offer the polite half-smile that people use to acknowledge the past without reopening it. He simply slid a napkin across the table toward her. Written on it, in his old steady hand, were two words. Why did you leave? The question wasn't an ambush. It was an autopsy. Olivia folded her arms tightly as if bracing against wind. Her pulse found an anxious rhythm in her throat. Because I didn't trust myself to stay, she said. The truth arrived raw, unpolished. I had postpartum psychosis, Elijah. Not the kind people post about online with filters and soft music. The kind where you wake up and the room doesn't belong to you anymore. Where the crying, mine, theirs, never stops. I was afraid of what I might do if I stayed. He said nothing, eyes fixed on the table, on the question he'd already written. Silence filled the cafe, thick and awkward, interrupted only by the hiss of the espresso machine. I thought I'd get better, she continued, words trembling but certain now. I thought time would fix it, and when it didn't, I thought leaving would protect you, protect them, but it only built a world I didn't know how to live in. Elijah's fingers drummed against the napkin, slow and deliberate. When he finally looked up, his eyes were calm, not forgiving, not angry, just tired. You could have told me, he said quietly. You could have said something before you disappeared. I tried, her voice cracked on the word. But by the time I found the courage, the silence between us was already louder than anything I could say. He nodded once, a small acknowledgement that hurt more than blame would have. The barista passed by with a tray of plates, glancing at them briefly before deciding not to interrupt. The world had learned to move around other people's grief. You know, Elijah said after a long pause, the day you left, I thought I'd done something unforgivable. For months, I kept replaying the last morning, what I said, what I didn't say. I'd never even heard of postpartum psychosis then. I just knew the woman I loved looked at me like I was a stranger standing too close to her children. Olivia pressed her palms flat against the table. I'm sorry, she whispered. You didn't do anything wrong. I just couldn't find the ground. Elijah exhaled, a sound more weary than resigned. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded page, its corners worn soft from years of handling. He said it between them. Sheet music. His handwriting again. Clean and meticulous except for where it faltered, halfway through measure 23. Beneath the staves, faint pencil marks spelled out a line of lyrics. I tried to build a song with what you left me, but the melody breaks where your name should be. Olivia's throat tightened. She traced the unfinished notes with one finger. You still write? She asked. Sometimes, he said. Mostly for the girls. They think music fixes everything. I let them believe that. She nodded slowly. Do they ask about me? Leah asks, he said. Ava doesn't. Not out loud. He hesitated. You've missed a lot of small things that matter more than big ones. Piano recitals, fevers, scraped knees, stories before bed. But you didn't miss all of them. Not yet. Olivia blinked, the words too delicate to hold. I don't want forgiveness, she said. Just a chance to live the days I still have left. To learn how to be their mother without expecting them to call me that. Elijah stared past her toward the window, where snow blurred into light. When he finally spoke, his voice was almost kind. If you mean that, he said, Thursday morning, the ice rink near Liberty Park. They'll be there. Her heart stuttered. You'll let me see them? I'll let them see you, he said. If you can stand long enough without running. He pushed back his chair and stood. The sweater hung loose around his shoulders, the quiet tremor in his right hand betraying the effort it took to hold the cup steady. He set a few crumpled bills on the table, the final note in a song that didn't know its ending. I'm not asking for a performance, Olivia, he said as he turned toward the door. Just proof that you can stand on the same ice they do. When the bell above the door chimed again, she stayed seated, staring at the page he'd left behind. The paper trembled in her hand, though the air was still. Around her, the cafe resumed its normal rhythm, cups clinking, low conversation, milk steaming. Life, ordinary and relentless. She read the unfinished lyric one more time, then folded the page carefully, placing it inside her coat pocket next to the linen-wrapped letters with the girls' names. Her fingers brushed against the edge of Leah's purple scarf. The faint scent of strawberries lingered, grounding her in the present. For the first time, she didn't feel like an intruder in her own story. Outside, snow thickened, erasing the outlines of the city. Olivia stepped out, coat collar high, and let the cold sting her awake. Across the street, the stoplight blinked red, then green, permission disguised as patience. She walked toward the corner, each step deliberate, steady, like a woman learning to stay balanced after a long fall. The unfinished song pressed against her side with every movement, as if reminding her that not every measure needed to be perfect, just played through. Thursday then, the rink. She whispered it under her breath like a vow, and this time she intended to show up. The ice rink smelled of old popcorn and frozen air, a blend of childhood and defeat. Olivia arrived early, lacing rental skates that looked like they'd been through a decade of other people's beginnings. Her hands trembled, not from the cold, but from the quiet that comes before you test the weight of your own promises. She hadn't slept. Every scenario had played out in her mind. The twins walking away, Elijah turning his back, herself failing in some new, irredeemable way. Still, she came. That was the point now. Not perfection, just presence. When the door opened behind her, the scrape of blades on rubber echoed like a clock starting. The sound of small voices followed, then Elijah's calm tone directing them. Leah's laugh carried first, bright and sharp like sunlight on snow. Ava trailed behind, book tucked under her arm even here, refusing to be unprepared. Elijah looked the same, steady posture, careful steps, but Olivia saw the small tremor in his right hand, how he kept it tucked in his coat pocket. Leah spotted her first. You came, she said, halfway surprise, halfway dare. I did, Olivia answered. I promised, didn't I? Leah tilted her head. Dad says promises are easy. Keeping them's the hard part. Your dad's right, Olivia said softly, but I'm learning. Ava didn't speak. She simply skated toward the rink entrance, efficient, self-contained. Elijah stayed back near the bleachers, nodding once to Olivia, a silent agreement. The test begins now. The first few minutes were humiliation disguised as effort. Olivia wobbled, clung to the rail, and nearly toppled into a teenager carrying nachos. Leah snorted so loudly she startled herself. Ava hid her smile behind her mitten. Olivia, cheeks burning, laughed anyway. "Well," she said, pushing herself upright, "I've already improved. Last time I fell faster." Leah skated a small circle near her, curious despite herself. "You're supposed to bend your knees, like this." Olivia mimicked her, bent too far and slipped. Her knees hit the ice, the sound sharp as punctuation. She winced but didn't curse, earning a muffled giggle from both girls. "See," she said, "I'm great at demonstrating what not to do." For a moment they skated in an awkward choreography, two confident children orbiting a clumsy adult pretending she wasn't afraid. But gradually something shifted. Leah looped back to her again and again, offering tiny corrections. Ava stayed farther out but didn't drift away completely. Elijah watched from the stands, his face unreadable, but his shoulders relaxed. When the buzzer signaled a break, Leah plopped down beside Olivia on the bench, pulling at her skate laces. Her long hair was tangled, bits of it sticking to her flushed cheeks. Olivia's fingers twitched with instinct before she asked, "May I?" Leah hesitated, then nodded. Olivia gathered the hair carefully, clumsy from years of boardrooms instead of braids. "Left over right, then under." "No, that wasn't right." She tried again. Her fingers fumbled. "YouTube makes this look easy," she muttered. Leah laughed. "You're not bad, just slow." Ava approached silently, holding out a purple elastic from her wrist. "Use this," she said, her tone neutral. Olivia accepted it like an offering. "Thank you." "It's for the braid," Ava said quickly. "Not you." "I know," Olivia replied, tying off the end. "Still, thank you." The braid wasn't perfect. It sagged to one side, but Leah smiled when she caught her reflection in her phone screen. "It's okay for a first try," she said. "Don't give up." The words landed with a quiet weight. Elijah used to say that exact phrase whenever Olivia doubted herself at the piano, before the boardrooms and the shareholders and the silence that followed her collapse. When they left the rink, the sky had turned a deep gray, clouds thick with new snow. Elijah ushered the girls ahead, and Olivia fell into step beside him. For a minute, they were just two adults walking the same pace. "She's warming to you," he said quietly. "I'm not sure," Olivia admitted. "It might just be the comedy of watching me nearly die on skates." Elijah smiled faintly. "That counts as progress in this family." They reached the parking lot. The girls climbed into the back seat of Elijah's old SUV, still arguing about who skated faster. Olivia lingered by the door, uncertain whether to say goodbye or stay. She settled for neither. "Thank you for letting me come," she said. "You didn't have to." Elijah looked at her for a long moment. "You showed up," he said. "That's more than I expected." His hand brushed against the car door as he reached for the handle. The tremor was worse now, barely noticeable but constant. She wanted to ask how bad it was, wanted to help, but the words froze. She wasn't ready to be that bold, not yet. That night, Olivia sat in her hotel room staring at the rink photo she'd taken when they weren't looking. A triangle of motion, Ava, Leah, and Elijah, outlined in soft light. She could almost hear their laughter, almost belong to it. Then her phone buzzed, a number she didn't recognize. One line. "Thank you for coming." Her breath caught. She typed back before she could overthink it. "I meant what I said. I'll keep showing up." The reply came slower this time. "We'll see. Thursday again. Same time." She smiled, small but real. It was not a promise, not even trust, just a door, cracked open enough to let in air. When she turned out the lights, the room stayed alive with echoes. Leah's laughter, Ava's quiet corrections, the scrape of skates. For once, the noise in her head didn't sound like failure. It sounded like a beginning. Down the hall, a heater kicked on. Olivia pulled Leah's purple scarf from her bag and draped it over the chair, its warmth fading, but not gone. For the first time in 6 years, she whispered goodnight not to the past, but to something still within reach. The week that followed rearranged itself quietly around the sound of mornings. For years, Olivia had begun her days with conference calls, calendars, and caffeine that tasted like ambition. Now it began with eggs that burned too quickly, mismatched socks, and the sound of twin voices negotiating over cereal brands. Elijah had invited her, not in words but in the absence of refusal, to help with the ordinary. After skating lessons became habit, she started appearing for breakfast. It began with small tasks: buttering toast, packing lunches, learning which thermos didn't leak. The girls treated her presence like a temporary exhibit in their routine, something fragile but interesting. Leah, ever curious, narrated everything she did. "Dad forgets to pack fruit sometimes," she said one morning, "and Ava likes her sandwich cut diagonally, not straight. She won't admit it, but she does." Ava, at the table with her book in perfect posture, didn't look up. "I heard that." "You were meant to," Leah said, grinning. Olivia caught herself smiling into the sink. "Diagonal," she repeated, slicing the bread carefully. "Noted." Elijah watched from the kitchen doorway, mug in hand. His expression was unreadable, something between gratitude and hesitation. The tremor in his hand was subtler today, though she'd learned not to mistake that for strength. He cleared his throat. "You're up early for someone on West Coast time." "I've stopped living in time zones," she said. "I'm trying local." He nodded, amused. "How's that going?" "I burned breakfast," she said, "but the view's better than a boardroom." The small talk wasn't really small, it was scaffolding. Every word helped rebuild the part of their relationship that language had abandoned years ago. By the third Thursday, Olivia had learned which drawer held the girls' gloves and which cupboard creaked loud enough to wake Elijah when she tried to make coffee quietly. She also learned to recognize the look that passed over his face in the evenings, the quiet exhaustion that trembled just beneath his composure. The ALS wasn't advancing fast, but it was advancing, and she could see it in the way he sometimes had to steady his grip on the piano keys or rest longer after climbing the stairs. Once, while the girls were in their room arguing over a poster, Olivia caught him massaging his right hand. "Does it hurt?" she asked. He looked up startled, then shook his head. "Not pain exactly. It just forgets what it's supposed to do sometimes." Her chest tightened. "That must be terrifying." "It used to be," he said. "Now it's mostly inconvenient." Then softer. "Don't look at me like that, Liv. I'm still here." "I know." Her voice cracked on the second word. "I just wish I'd been here sooner." He didn't answer, and she didn't expect him to. That night, after the girls had gone to bed, Elijah asked her to read them a story for Story Day. The school had a tradition where parents volunteered to read their favorite tales aloud. Leah had signed him up without asking. The event was tomorrow. "I can't stand that long," he admitted, eyes flicking toward the cane propped by the door. "Would you?" "Of course," she said immediately. The next morning, she stood in front of 20 small faces in a classroom that smelled like crayons and sanitizer. She read a story she had written herself the night before. A simple tale about a fox who left her den because the forest inside her had gone dark, and how she returned one winter when the snow made everything quiet enough to hear again. Her voice trembled only once, on the line. The cubs did not know if they could trust her, but they left the door open anyway. When she finished, Leah clapped first, loud and certain. Ava followed slowly, as if deciding whether to believe the story or the woman who told it. Afterward, Leah tugged her hand. "The fox was you, wasn't it?" Olivia crouched to her level. "Maybe," she said, "but mostly I think it was about learning to stay." Ava lingered at the edge of the group. "Foxes don't usually come back," she said quietly. "No," Olivia agreed, "but sometimes they do." When the school day ended, Olivia waited in the parking lot beside Elijah's car. Snow had started to fall again, the flakes thick and deliberate. The girls ran ahead, scarves flapping, laughter dissolving into the wind. Ava slowed when she reached her, tugging on the sleeve of Olivia's coat. "You did good," she said, then hesitated. "With the story." Olivia smiled, the compliment fragile but real. "Thank you." "Mom," Ava said suddenly, the word awkward in her mouth, heavy with years of disuse. "I mean—" Olivia stopped breathing. Ava's face flushed red. "You don't have to—" But Ava didn't correct herself. She just looked at her, eyes fierce, as though daring Olivia to disappear again. Then she ran ahead to join Leah, leaving the word hanging between them like something too precious to touch. Elijah stepped beside her, following the twins with his gaze. "That's the first time she said it out loud," he murmured. Olivia's throat burned. I didn't think I'd ever hear it again. Don't push it, he said gently. Let it come on its own. I will. She looked up at the gray sky. I'm not running anymore. At dinner, the house smelled like garlic and hope. Leah narrated every part of her day, while Ava picked at her food, pretending not to listen. When the meal was done, Olivia helped Elijah clear the plates. He swayed slightly as he stood, and she caught his arm without thinking. You need to rest, she said. I'm fine, he murmured, but he didn't pull away. Later, when the girls were asleep, Elijah sat at the piano. His hands moved slower now, more deliberate, pausing over each note like he was asking permission. Olivia stood by the door, watching. The unfinished lullaby she'd once found sat on the stand, open to the place where his handwriting faded out. She walked over and picked up a pencil. May I? He nodded. She filled in the final measures, humming softly as she wrote. The melody was simple, hopeful, a bridge where there had once been a break. When she set the pencil down, Elijah looked at her with something like peace. You wrote the end, he said. No, she whispered. I just helped it find its way home. Morning sunlight spilled through the kitchen blinds like an invitation she hadn't earned. Olivia stood over the stove, stirring oatmeal with a focus that made it look like a contract negotiation. The twins sat at the table, Leah humming a half-remembered tune from her skating lesson, Ava pretending to read but really watching everyone through the corner of her eye. Elijah's cane leaned against the counter, a silent reminder that time was keeping its own schedule. It had been a month since the ice rink, a week since the story day. The house no longer paused when she entered. Those small silences still trailed her like loyal ghosts. Did you know oatmeal can burn? Leah said, wrinkling her nose. I do now, Olivia answered. She smiled without looking up. Ava folded her book closed. You don't have to keep cooking for us. I know, Olivia said, but you keep eating it, so I figure I'm not fired yet. That earned her a small, reluctant smirk. Progress in Ava's language. Elijah entered a moment later, moving slowly, the stiffness more visible now. His left leg dragged a little, not much, but enough that Olivia felt it in her chest. He poured coffee into a mug and joined them, his presence steadying the table the way gravity steadies planets. Doctor called, he said between sips. Wants to adjust medication again. Minor stuff. Olivia nodded, pretending not to hear the way his voice caught on again. Do you want me to drive you? I'll be fine. He looked at her, that measured calm back in place. You've done enough. The words should have reassured her. Instead, they bruised. After breakfast, the twins scattered. Ava to her violin practice, Leah to the backyard where she was building a fort that looked more like a laundry disaster. Elijah sank into the couch. Olivia gathered plates, rinsing them as the house filled with the thin, delicate sound of Ava's scales. She turned, drying her hands. You should rest. He didn't answer immediately. I'm not tired, he said finally. I'm just slowing down. That's the same thing, she said. He shook his head. No, slowing down is what you do when you realize rushing isn't saving you anymore. She crossed the room and sat opposite him. You always did talk like a song lyric. He smiled faintly. Occupational hazard. They sat in a silence that felt less fragile than before, both of them listening to Ava's music drift through the house. The lullaby she'd finished with him sat on the piano, pages soft from overuse. It had become the soundtrack of their evenings. Ava learning it by ear, Leah humming along, Elijah correcting gently, his tremor visible, but his rhythm sure. Olivia spoke softly. Do you ever think about what happens when... She stopped herself. When this gets worse, he finished for her. Sometimes. I don't want the girls to go through it alone. They won't. He said it like a fact, not comfort. That afternoon, Olivia found herself in the twins' room. The walls were alive with paper, drawings, charts, photographs. One in particular caught her attention, a collage of family pictures. In every photo before her return, Elijah stood in the center, one daughter at each side. Now tucked in the corner, a recent printout, her at the rink, laughing, off balance, the girls skating near her. It was blurry, imperfect, and beautiful. Behind her, Ava's voice came quietly. Leah took that. She said you looked happy. I was, Olivia said. Ava hesitated in the doorway. She thinks everything's fixed now. Olivia turned. And you don't? Ava shrugged. You left once. It's hard to forget that. Olivia took a breath, steady but trembling at the edges. You don't have to forgive me. Just keep letting me show you that I'm not going anywhere. Ava stared for a long time. Then she said, the story about the fox, you wrote that for us, didn't you? Yes. She came back, but the forest was different. She didn't expect that, right? No, Olivia admitted, but she learned to listen before she tried to lead. Ava's mouth quirked. Leah says you braid hair badly. I do, Olivia agreed. Terribly. Good, Ava said, and left the doorway with something lighter in her step. That evening, Elijah insisted on making dinner. You burn oatmeal, he teased, waving off her protest. She stood by anyway, ready to help if his grip slipped. But it didn't, until he reached for the salt. The small glass jar fell, shattering against the tile. He froze, staring at the mess, as if the sound had cracked something inside him. Without thinking, Olivia knelt, swept the salt and glass into her palm, ignoring the sting. It's okay, she said softly. It's just a spill. His jaw tightened. I used to play Chopin in front of hundreds of people. Now I can't hold a jar. Then don't measure your life by what you've lost, she said. Measure it by what still answers when you reach for it. He met her eyes, the fight leaving his shoulders. And what's answering now, Liv? She reached for his trembling hand, held it between both of hers. This. Later, the twins found them at the piano. Elijah's right hand rested over the keys. Olivia played the lower notes, slow and steady. The girls stood behind them, watching as the lullaby filled the room. Complete now, whole. When the final note faded, Leah clapped. Ava didn't, but she stepped forward and placed her hand on Olivia's arm, brief and certain. Elijah exhaled, tired but smiling. It's a good ending, he murmured. Not yet, Olivia said. We've still got more measures left. He laughed, low and genuine, the sound sliding into memory. The girls started arguing over who could play next, and Olivia leaned back, listening to the chaos. For the first time in years, the house didn't feel borrowed. It felt lived in. When she went to bed that night, she found Leah's purple scarf folded neatly on her pillow. Beside it, a new drawing, 4 figures on a sheet of white paper, one tall, one steady, 2 smaller. Above them, scrawled in uneven handwriting, "We're learning together." Olivia pressed the drawing to her chest. The house was quiet, save for the whisper of wind and the faint hum of life continuing exactly as it should. The days began to blend together, not in monotony, but in the steady rhythm of a family rediscovering itself. Every morning had its own sound. The kettle's whistle, Leah's half-sung scales, the scrape of Elijah's cane against the hardwood floor. Olivia learned to measure time not by meetings or miles, but by the small repetitions that tethered her to now. She no longer stayed in the guest room. Elijah hadn't asked her to move, but the unspoken gravity of habit pulled her into the kitchen before sunrise and the living room long after the girls went to bed. The house had stopped flinching at her presence. Even Ava had stopped correcting her tone when she gave advice. Still, there were moments when the quiet pressed too hard, the kind of quiet that remembered what it had once been used for. It was during one of those moments, late at night, wind whispering through the trees outside, that she found Elijah at the piano. The lamp beside him cast a pool of gold over his shoulders. His right hand trembled slightly over the keys, missing the first note twice before landing it. "You're supposed to be asleep," she said softly. He smiled, not turning. "Doctors tell me to keep my muscles active. I tell them music is cheaper than therapy." Olivia came closer. The lullaby they'd finished together was open on the stand. "Do you ever play anything else?" "Sometimes," he said. "But this one..." His hand hovered over the last measure. "It's the only one that feels honest." She sat beside him, careful not to disturb the fragile calm. "It's beautiful," she said. "It's unfinished," he replied. "Music never really ends. It just decides when to rest." For a while, they sat without speaking. Then he added, "You've changed, Liv. You don't chase the silence anymore. You let it breathe. She looked down, tracing the grain of the piano. I was afraid of it before. Silence made me listen to myself. I didn't like what I heard. He turned to her. And now? Now I hear them, she said. Ava and Leah. You. Us. The air between them thickened. Not romantic, but full of something truer. The weight of years spent apart, and the strange grace of being allowed to try again. When the clock struck midnight, she convinced him to rest. As she helped him to bed, his fingers brushed hers. You don't have to keep doing this, he murmured. Caretaking wasn't in your original job description. It is now, she said. 2 days later, the first real storm of the season arrived. Snow fell in sheets, turning the neighborhood into a watercolor of white and gray. Elijah canceled his music classes, and the girls celebrated with pancakes and improvised snow angels in the backyard. Olivia joined them, her boots sinking deep into the powder. Leah, laughing, threw a snowball that missed its target by 3 feet. Mom doesn't know how to duck, she shouted. The word mom landed like a spark in Olivia's chest. Simple, natural, spoken without ceremony. Ava didn't correct her. For the first time, the title didn't feel borrowed. It felt like fact. When they came back inside, cheeks flushed, Elijah was at the kitchen table surrounded by paper and a steaming mug. He was sketching something. Notes, chords, little scribbles that looked like blueprints. What's this? Olivia asked, brushing snow from her coat. He smiled up at her. A song for the recital next month. The girl's teacher asked me to help with the accompaniment. Can I hear it? He gestured toward the pages. It's not ready for an audience yet. Leah leaned on his shoulder. Is it happy or sad? Both, he said. The best songs always are. That night, after the girls had gone to bed, Olivia found him still awake, surrounded by crumpled drafts. His right hand trembled harder now. The pencil fell twice before she reached out to steady it. Let me, she said. Together they smoothed a blank sheet. She wrote as he dictated, his voice low, each word careful. You waited in silence. I built my sky with fear. You lit the windows. I disappeared. He paused, eyes shining. You still know how to make a line breathe, he said. And you still know how to turn pain into music. When they finished, he looked exhausted, but content. You should play it at the recital, he said suddenly. She blinked. Me? They'll need a pianist, he said. I can't promise I'll manage both hands. Her throat tightened. Elijah. He reached for her wrist, his fingers light but certain. You came back. You've already done the hardest thing? She nodded, too moved to answer. The day of the recital arrived like a heartbeat. The auditorium smelled faintly of floor polish and anticipation. Rows of parents filled the seats, cameras ready, scarves still dusted with snow. Backstage, Ava tuned her violin while Leah adjusted the hem of her dress. Elijah sat nearby, a calm center amid the hum of nervous children. Olivia hovered at the piano, hands resting on the keys. Her reflection in the lacquered surface looked older than she remembered, but steadier, too. When their turn came, she followed Elijah to the stage. The twins took their places. The lights dimmed. He gave her a small nod. You start, he whispered. Her fingers found the opening chord, the one she'd written for him all those years ago. It sounded different now, less polished, more alive. Elijah's left hand joined hers, filling in the low notes, while Ava's violin soared above them, fragile and clear. Leah sang the final verse, her voice trembling but brave. The melody stayed where the silence once grew. I waited for you, and you came through. The last note hung in the air, trembling between applause and prayer. Then the audience erupted, clapping, cheering. Leah grinned. Ava looked down, trying not to smile too widely. Olivia turned toward Elijah. His eyes were closed, his lips curved into the faintest smile. She didn't need to ask what he was thinking. The music said it for him. They had finished something they'd both started long ago. Not a song, but a promise. The applause followed them long after the music stopped. When the lights dimmed and the crowd began to file out, Elijah stayed seated on the piano bench, his hand resting lightly on the keys. Olivia didn't rush him. She recognized that look on his face, the one that said he was taking a mental photograph, storing this exact moment somewhere safe. Leah ran up first, nearly tripping over her dress, her cheeks pink from the stage lights. "We did it! We didn't even mess up," she said, throwing her arms around him. Ava followed more cautiously, violin case clutched to her chest. "You didn't just do it," Elijah said softly. "You made something new." Olivia watched him, her heart full and breaking at once. His voice sounded thinner than usual, and she noticed how his right hand trembled uncontrollably now that the adrenaline had faded. When Leah ran off to join her friends, she stepped closer, laying a steady hand on his shoulder. "Let's get you home," she whispered. He nodded, exhaustion softening his features. Back at the house, the night settled around them like an exhale. The girls changed into pajamas and retold the concert in looping excitement. Elijah sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a cup of tea that had already gone cold. Olivia reheated it quietly, watching him. "You should rest," she said. "In a bit." His gaze lingered on the piano in the living room. "I just want to sit with it for a while. That song—" He trailed off, his breath catching. Olivia pulled a chair beside him. "That song was a bridge," she said, "between what we were and what we are." He smiled faintly. "You always did find the words I couldn't." They sat together for a long time, the house humming with the soft sound of the heater and the occasional burst of laughter from the twins' room. Elijah's fingers drummed against his mug, slower and slower, until they stopped. His breathing changed, deeper, heavier. "Elijah?" He blinked slowly, focusing on her with effort. "I'm fine," he murmured, but his voice slurred, the consonants soft. Fear cracked through her calm. "You're not fine." She moved closer. "Elijah, look at me." He tried to stand and stumbled. Olivia caught him before he hit the floor. His mug shattered beside them, scattering pieces across the tile. "Elijah!" she shouted, shaking his shoulder. He didn't answer. Panic clawed up her throat. "Leah! Ava! Call 911!" The girls came running, eyes wide, voices trembling as they spoke to the operator. Olivia pressed her palm to Elijah's chest, counting beats, listening for the soft rise of his breath. It came, shallow but present. Relief cut through terror like a blade. "It's okay," she whispered, though it wasn't. "I've got you. I've got you this time." The ambulance arrived in a wash of blue light and command. Paramedics flooded the small kitchen, moving with practiced precision. Olivia stayed out of the way, her back against the counter, watching them fit an oxygen mask over Elijah's face, checking vitals, murmuring terms she hadn't learned to understand. "Ma'am," one said gently, "he's stable for transport, but we'll need you to follow us to St. Mark's." She nodded. Leah clung to her leg, eyes wet. "Is he going to die?" Olivia crouched down, pulling both girls close. "He's going to the hospital so they can help him breathe easier," she said. It was the truth, if not the whole of it. Ava's voice was small but steady. "You'll stay with him?" Olivia looked between them, and for the first time in her life, she didn't hesitate. "Yes," she said. "I'm not leaving again. Not ever." The hospital lights were too bright, the air too clean. Machines whispered in steady rhythm, charting the fragile proof of life. Elijah lay on the bed, paler than she remembered, a tangle of wires at his chest. Olivia sat beside him, her fingers wrapped around his. The tremor that had once belonged to him now lived in her hands instead. When the doctor came in, his words were gentle but clinical. Respiratory strain, minor arrhythmia, stress-related fatigue. "He'll need observation," the doctor said. "He's lucky you acted quickly." Lucky. The word didn't feel right. It wasn't luck that kept him alive. It was choice, timing, the stubbornness of love. When the girls arrived the next morning, sleepy and clutching a stuffed bear between them, Olivia met them in the hallway. She crouched down to their level. "He's awake," she whispered. Leah's eyes lit up. "Can we see him?" "Of course." Inside, Elijah's gaze brightened as soon as he saw them. Leah climbed onto the side of the bed, careful of the wires. Ava stood at the foot, her posture rigid with concern. "I scared you, didn't I?" Elijah said weakly. "Yes," Leah said honestly. Ava crossed her arms. "Don't do it again." He smiled, his voice a rasp. "I'll try not to." Olivia stood near the window, letting the scene unfold. The girls were talking over each other now, recounting the concert, the ambulance, the broken mug. Elijah listened, his eyes soft with exhaustion but full of life. When he looked at her, it was with gratitude that didn't need words. That night, when the girls fell asleep in the hospital room's small couch, Olivia sat beside Elijah again. He was half asleep, his breathing shallow but steady. "You should go home," he murmured. "I am home," she said quietly. He smiled faintly. "You finally stopped running." "I had to," she whispered. "There wasn't anywhere else left to go." His fingers twitched in hers, weak but certain. "Then stay, just stay." She leaned closer, her forehead resting against his hand. "Always," she promised. Outside the window, dawn broke over the snow, pale and quiet. The city stirred to life, unaware that inside one small hospital room, a family had decided that the day didn't need to start over, only continue. For the first time, Olivia wasn't afraid of tomorrow. The months that followed were softer, slower, measured in breaths, not deadlines. Winter melted into spring, the snow retreating from the sidewalks like a tide going home. The hospital became a memory rather than a rhythm, and the sound of oxygen machines was replaced by the hum of morning life again, coffee brewing, violin scales, the clatter of cereal bowls. Elijah moved more carefully now, the tremor constant but manageable. The doctors had adjusted his medication, and though his energy faded faster, his smile hadn't. Olivia had turned her old precision toward caregiving, schedules, appointments, balanced meals, but there was tenderness in the structure this time. She wasn't fixing anything. She was tending. The twins seemed to sense it too. Ava had stopped pretending not to look for Olivia when she came home from errands. Leah still slipped drawings into her coat pocket, family sketches with four figures, sometimes a dog, sometimes a house that looked nothing like theirs but had home written in looping letters at the top. One Saturday morning, Olivia found Elijah on the porch, a blanket over his lap and sunlight catching on his hair. His notebook rested open beside him. "Writing again?" she asked, handing him his coffee. "Finishing," he said. "I think this one's the last." "The last what?" He smiled faintly. "The last song I'll need to write." She sat beside him, folding her hands in her lap. "That sounds like something you'd say before proving yourself wrong." "Maybe," he said, "but this feels complete." He looked at her, his expression gentle and knowing. "We're complete." The wind stirred the chimes that Leah had made for him out of old keys and string. The sound was uneven, imperfect, beautiful. Olivia let it fill the silence. "I sold the last of my shares," she said after a while. "Eris will keep flying without me. They think I'm insane." "They're not wrong," Elijah said, grinning. She laughed softly. "Probably not. But I'd rather lose my mind here than keep it in a boardroom." He took her hand, his thumb tracing small circles across her palm. "You were never lost, Liv. You just needed a place worth staying for." The recital at Zilker Park arrived on a Sunday full of sunlight. The grass was still damp from morning dew, and folding chairs dotted the field in uneven rows. Families gathered with picnic blankets, cameras, and that nervous excitement only parents of performing children possess. Ava tuned her violin near the stage, her expression composed but her foot tapping impatiently. Leah adjusted her dress, spinning until the skirt flared out like a bell. Elijah sat in the front row with his cane propped beside him, eyes bright despite the fatigue shadowing them. Olivia sat at the piano, her sheet music open to the lullaby they had written together, the one they had finished in pencil, measure by measure, like rebuilding a house out of silence. When the announcer called their names, the girls walked to the microphones. Ava began the melody, her bow confident and sure. Leah's voice followed, light and clear. "You waited in silence. I built my sky with fear. You lit the windows, and I found you here." Olivia's fingers moved across the keys, steady and unhurried. Elijah joined in for the harmony, his left hand pressing the lower notes, his right trembling but determined. The song rose over the park, fragile, imperfect, completely alive. By the time the last note faded, the crowd was silent. Then applause erupted, echoing through the open field. Leah ran to Olivia first, hugging her tightly. Ava followed, her composure finally cracking into a smile. "We did it," she whispered. "You did," Olivia said. "All of you." Elijah stood slowly, leaning on his cane. We did, he corrected, his voice hoarse. When the girls dashed off to join their classmates, Olivia turned to him. You should sit. You look. I look alive, he interrupted, his grin quiet but full. She laughed, brushing away tears she hadn't realized were there. Yes, she said. You do. That evening they returned home to the kind of quiet that follows celebration. Peaceful, earned. Elijah lowered himself onto the couch. Leah and Ava curled up on either side of him. Olivia lit the fire, its soft crackle wrapping around the room. Tell the story again, Leah said. The one about the fox. Olivia smiled. You already know it. I want to hear it anyway, Leah insisted. Ava yawned. The fox is her, she said sleepily. Elijah's eyes met Olivia's across the flickering firelight. And the cub? He asked softly. They're smarter than she was, Olivia said. They waited instead of running. Leah giggled. And the fox learned to stay, right? She did, Olivia said. Finally. Outside, night spread over the neighborhood. The wind pressed against the windows, carrying the faint, uneven tune of Leah's wind chimes. Elijah leaned back, closing his eyes, listening. Olivia took his hand, and the girls dozed between them, their breathing sinking to the rhythm of the fire. For a long time, no one spoke. The world beyond the house could have been frozen, suspended in the stillness between heartbeats. Then Elijah whispered, barely audible, You wrote the end, Liv. She shook her head. No, she said. I just stayed long enough to hear it. He smiled without opening his eyes. That's all endings are. The fire popped softly. Leah shifted in her sleep, murmuring something about snow. Ava's hand, limp in her lap, brushed against Olivia's arm. Olivia looked around the room, the mismatched furniture, the scattered toys, the sheet music still open on the piano. Imperfect, ordinary, real. She thought of the woman she'd been 6 years ago, the one who left out of fear, and realized that grief had turned into gratitude somewhere along the way. She didn't have to run from silence anymore. It had become the language of home. Outside, dawn began to gather beneath the horizon, pale and certain, and inside, Olivia stayed exactly where she was, surrounded by music, by warmth, by the impossible tenderness of a life reclaimed.